I'm Ginger,
And I'm Alex from Team Tantrum.
and you're listening to the RoboCast.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sam Elliott64, and welcome to the RoboCast with myself and World of Woodrow. How you doing, Jevon?
I'm good. We're missing Steve.
We are missing Steve. He has some family commitments to be doing this weekend.
All the best, Steve.
Yes, absolutely. And hopefully he's doing well. And we are joined by two team members from the same team. It's Alex Grant and Ginger Schmidt from Team Seems Reasonable and Tantrum this season. How you doing, guys?
Good. Thanks for having us on.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. I want to start with, before we get into talking about the robots themselves, how did you two find being put in front of the cameras? Because if I remember correctly, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Ginger, I know you've done a lot of the work on the Seems Reasonable YouTube channel before, and you've done things with Aaron and kind of done the whole explanation-y videos, post-fights for a good while, but it's very different being on national TV in front of the camera, and how have you found it?
I think it's been a super fun experience. Definitely being on camera at BattleBots is a totally different ball game than sitting in front of my computer and chatting with Aaron. So that was definitely a change. I have really enjoyed having Alex as my co-captain. We've known each other for a few years now. So I just felt like we had really natural chemistry and worked well together. I think the big thing for us was Seems Reasonable as such a diverse team. We really wanted to demonstrate the sort of vast group and community that we have. And so having both of us as captains was a big part of that as well. So it's been really rewarding to see it, and hopefully it's coming across in the show as well.
Yeah, it definitely has been. It's been very, the chemistry is very clear. It's not just, the fact that you've been chosen at random. It's very you seem like you're enjoying yourselves at least.
Yeah. It was fun. It is funny because I Ginger and I have both been on Seems Reasonable since the beginning, season 3. And so I won't speak for Ginger, but I'm more of a, shy type. So if you go through the old fights and stuff, I'm always off to the side. I'm not in front of the cameras. But coming into this year, we needed somebody to take on not only the camera roles here, but also the technical roles. And so, Aaron has shiny object syndrome. He's going to go work on Blip more, right? And granted, he still worked on Tantrum a lot and vice versa. We all worked on both robots. But somebody needed to take ownership of the Tantrum, right? Otherwise, there was a good chance that nothing would have happened with it, and we would have just brought Blip this year. And so taking on that leadership role, Ginger and I decided to get Tantrum in the arena, right? And in front of the cameras and dealing with that. But I was terrified, by the way, in at least the first interviews, right? So the first interviews were they cut almost everything on my side because I was a little bit of a mess. But after we got that first win, it was the Gingers were shook. Yeah. Not all good, but
okay,
better.
It was less
better.
bad.
Less bad. We'll say
Okay.
that. Yep.
Well, let's talk about Tantrum first of all. Obviously, your side of things, more or less. I want to ask you the same question we asked the Shatter team last week. How did you guys feel about having just the 2 fights? Because I know a lot's been made of it online. Certain teams getting 2 fights, certain teams getting 3.
It's a conversation that seems to have been arcing for the longest amount of time.
Really, yeah. So what was your kind of reaction to finding out, okay, we're in the bracket, that's great, but you only get 2 fights?
I think it sort of depends on how far we end up going in the bracket almost. On the one hand, it's disappointing that we didn't get necessarily a better seed, because if we had the opportunity to prove ourselves with third robot, maybe we would have seeded higher, maybe we wouldn't have. I think it's just hard to know, to be honest. And if we get eliminated early, then obviously it sucks to not have as many fights. But then maybe if we go really far, then it's nice to sort of not have as much damage. So truly, I think it's hard to tell. I don't really have a good answer. I don't know, Alex, what you're
Yeah. The hindsight 2020 stuff, what you're saying is you never know until after the rest of the tournament shakes out, because you don't know how many of your fights are going to make it to TV. That's super duper important for a lot of people. And having at least a minimum of 3 opportunities to make it to TV is, I think, really important for the show. And moving forward, I think everybody should have the same number of fights. It doesn't have to be 3, it doesn't have to be 4, whatever the number is. Everybody, I do think, should have the same number of fights. And that's kind of where it's kind of it's double-edged sword for everybody, right? Like you have less damage, you have less opportunities to go and prove yourself to the selection committee. But that from my perspective, I was a bit disappointed because it feels more gamey than like less of a sport when people all don't have the same preseason, right? And it wasn't explicitly made clear at the beginning, so there wasn't like a discussion of, oh, you're going to get a bye if you get 2 wins and you're already in the tournament. But that's clearly also not the case, and so it's one of those things that I hope going into the future, they schedule around and make sure that everybody does get the same number of fights.
Yeah, hopefully, I mean, in the future, fingers crossed, they will either limit the amount of competitors so that they can fit all of the fights into the time that they're given, or have a longer time to film all of the fights they need for a bigger field. I would prefer, well, either of those over this year's
mess.
Yeah, but you're not sitting in a tent for 2 weeks getting shot by the tables.
That is very true. I'm not dealing with electrocution on a daily basis. Yeah. It's an interesting one, and I think it's interesting what you said, Ginger, that the teams that got 2 fights didn't get as high a seed. I think if you're given an in to the round of 32 at 2 fights, and you're saying you're good enough to get into the bracket as you are, having a mid-table seeding is really strange to me. So especially if you've been, as Tantrum was, top 4 machine last year, should be up there, realistically speaking, as with one the of the top and tier
things
bots.
Like that. Yeah, it is strange to me.
I mean, sorry. I mean, I'm still like really happy with like how we seeded and like our place in the bracket. Like, I just want to make that clear.
I'm not. Right before the seedings came out, I was like, I just want to be top 10. I don't think anything beyond that is like that far out. But yeah, I was like, I want to be top 10, and then to be eked out by 1 spot is like
I think was it really you wanted to be above Aaron? Is that what it is?
Yeah. Yeah, it's because Blip bumped us out. That's what happened.
Rude. I do want to ask about the first 2 fights that you had before we crack on and talk about Blip a little bit as well. Wasn't all smooth sailing, especially that Lucky fight. Does that kind of catch you by surprise? Because I think Lucky has caught everyone by surprise this season, how good it was.
Ginger?
I think that I guess Alex and I jokingly have this motto that's trust the process. And I love it, but it's not the most popular with our whole team. And I think Tantrum's ability to sort of be like the bot that just keeps chugging is really captured in that fight where, we do our best, we turn the bolts, we get Tantrum, sort of as tip-top shape as we can. And I think what happens in the box, at least for me, is a bit of a blur. Like Dylan and Brian do a great job driving. I try to encourage them. Alex sort of lets them know how the clock is running. And I mean, gosh, I don't know. Like, to be honest, I don't have like a good answer. I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, expanding on the like in the arena fight stuff, like we're asking about the Lucky fight specifically here. The one thing that I really like about Tantrum, right, and one thing that I fight for in the design process early on was that Tantrum, like you don't have to be afraid of degrees of freedom, I guess is what I was always kind of like of the opinion of, because we had like a static, or our stream mech, right, in season 4 was those like spikes and stuff. It didn't work very well at all, right, and we lost a lot of fights because of that, both with Boxing Champ and Tantrum. And so, adding an extra stream mech, having the punching mechanism sometimes helps you out. And in the case of the Lucky fight, like I actually wasn't worried at all during the fight about getting off that shelf, right? I think I'm sure you've like looked into it, saw what's on like the internet and everything about how Mark and what's the driver's name again?
We forget this every week as well. We're so complimentary of him, and it's just like I can't remember the guy's name.
Dang it! He's awesome. He's I think my favorite new person that I met this year. He's just a pleasure to talk to, and he was so excited about like even those like the some of like the mundane things Like we gave him like the sprocket that they broke, right? And he didn't realize that people give each other parts after the fights. And so like it's like giving somebody like it's like giving somebody a Christmas present. Whereas like sometimes it's like, oh, by the way, like here Ray Billings, like here have a fist, and it's just like awesome, I'll add it to my collection. But like when we gave him that little sprocket, his eyes lit up more than I think anybody else that we.
Is it?
Yeah. And then he gets Lucky's blade, or not Lucky's blade, blade. Sorry,
blade.
Blade's blade. Right, and he comes over and he's like, holy sh. Like,
you can awesome. Swear. It's okay. You can swear.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you. Yeah. But yeah, so we had the degrees of freedom for those instances, right? And so like the puncher was going to get us off, and if that wasn't, then it
was on the sort of pivoty section as well that was eventually going to push you off. And
exactly.
Yeah. I think that's why there's a moment where they are sort of almost showboaty celebrating and realise where you are and see, okay, they're coming down, and in we go again.
Yeah.
They went for the right call, 100%. They got a free shot, and if at that point our self-rider sprocket, our self-rider wasn't going to work because the sprocket was broken already at that point. If he got us upside down at any point after that for the rest of the match, we would have lost. So
driver is either David Kennedy, Matt Bailey, Robert Frankovich.
It's
Olsen.
Matt
Bailey. Lovely.
Matt
Olsen. Yeah, he's there.
Olsen.
Yeah. I see him further down. Yeah.
Well, we're just going to tantrum a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about Blip as well, because obviously, as you mentioned, you could both have kind of an overarching team among, seems reasonable. It's not just, you guys work on Tantrum, another group work on Blip. It's kind of one big society, if you like, working on the pair of them. How surprised were you that it worked, that Blip has worked as well as it has done until this point? Was there any, like, inkling you're thinking, oh my god, we're 3-0 with this? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, I think that's the sort of the magic of the team that we've been able to put together. I think Aaron is one of the most creative, ingenious people that I know, and he has these amazing ideas. But it takes more than one person, I think, to tackle such an advanced project. And so we have team members like the Blip weapons operator, Brian Culver, who, just gets really into detailed design. And we have Dylan and Alex, and Brian Silverman. We have all these people, people that do electronics, people that do sort of more of the receiver, battery power. There's manufacturing, like there's so much. And I think other people have sort of talked about the shift between sort of BattleBots used to be like very much like a garage sport, a one-man thing. People can do it from their home. And I think what we've sort of tried to do is model it after the first Robotics, more of like the formula style team where it's people have specialties, people have roles, and people have things that they are fully responsible for. And that allows us to tackle, I think, more complex and more difficult challenges because of that model. And I didn't spend as much time with Blip as other people have. And for me, I was definitely nervous. I think when Alex mentioned we've been with Tantrum since season 3, and that first season didn't go as really anybody wanted it to. And so you have sort of a lot of hype, a lot of excitement, and you don't really get an opportunity to test in the box. Truly, you don't. And so I was personally very nervous. I think Aaron might say otherwise, but yeah, I don't know. That's my take, I guess.
Yeah, and I'll add, like, we get asked sometimes, like, okay, you have 16 people on your roster, right? We have a huge team. Who actually does the work, right? Is it everybody? Like, what's going on there? And I can confidently say that between the two robots, that like if everybody wasn't involved, like this wouldn't have happened. And so you ask, were we surprised? No, not necessarily, because we had the people that would make it work. And then also, like, we had a horrible season 3 with a flipper. And we know how bad it gets at filming if you have a robot that doesn't work. Mm-hmm. And so we did make a very conscious decision early on of what is our bar. So, like, we have a bar, like, how good is the flipper? Basically, we know the drivetrain is going to be good, but like if the flipper is below a certain bar, we are not going to take it. And in testing, we got past that bar and we're confident enough to show up. And so at that point, that I wasn't actually that surprised. I am ecstatic that we made it 3-0, right? Like, you can never go into a competition saying I'm going to go undefeated. Anyone who says they're going to win the giant nut on day one is
unless you're
you
Ray
know,
Billings, you can't get away with
well,
it. Right?
even now, Ray Billings cannot confidently say it. I would say.
Yeah. BattleBots, combat robotics is a huge part of it. Is like not random chance. Everything you do is trying to like create
it's good
opportunity.
Fortune. Like there is good fortune.
There is
involved.
a certain element of luck to everything working for you and everything panning out how you'd expect it to.
Right. So to make it through the like 3 preliminary fights and then what is it, 5 or 6 round of 32 fights to win the nut. If anybody tells you that they're gonna win 8 matches in a row, like
it's a big uphill battle for anyone.
Definitely.
Yeah. So.
Well, we'll get to the 2 fights you had a little bit later on, but of course we will start from the very beginning of the episode. And if you haven't watched it, click off now, go and watch it. You know what to do by now, surely. And if you listen to this, why are you listening to this if you haven't seen it anyway? But we'll gloss over that.
They're here for the pre-ramble talking about Tantrum.
Of course.
They've finished listening to the podcast now and they're off.
Yeah, that's what everyone wants to listen to.
Yeah.
Well, fight number 1 was, of course... Oh, that's not fight number 1. Oh, my God. There we go. Fight number 1 was the play-in.
Yeah, the right place for the play-in match for this week anyway. Maybe I still think YouTube for play-ins to really sort of G up the episode and say, this is the play-in, now watch the episode. Whoa, it's amazing. But no, they've put this in at this point and sure.
And Hydra worked.
It did, finally, properly, for the first time
This
all season, I would say. Yeah, it worked effectively.
Yeah, it's Hydra's just something nice in the arena to watch. Like, much like Blip, we'll get to a bit later on. Like, it's just watching Hydra do its thing and like annoy their opponents and just kind of keep Defender off the floor like it did. And I know full well that Jake had some pent up aggression against the Vasquezes after last year, so he really took it out on poor old Jason and Defender.
That said, he was so I watched the post fight video that he put out. I think it was earlier today. I watched it.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
and it's just going through every flip, and it's like that's a miss, and that's a miss, and that's a miss, and there I got one, and then I missed again. He's very aware of his own shortcomings, and I know he works hard to get Hydra working to full potential because this thing could be really brutal in a perfect scenario, as we saw in this fight, really.
Yeah. Poor Jason, though. I mean,
yeah.
You know, you think, oh yeah, I've won 2-1. I might get into the bracket here. Oh no, I've got to play it against Hydra. You know,
yeah, that's the worst. That's the worst draw. I think that of the entire bracket, in my opinion, is like getting drawn against Hydra as Defender. Like,
so you look at these lovely pictures of Hydra, and it's got nothing on the sides, and you think, well, Jason, he's a reasonably good driver. He could get under there. No, of course not. It has the skirt pieces. He sees you coming.
Yeah, definitely.
He knows what's going on.
Yeah. And of course, you know, Jake chatting a lot of smack to the camera afterwards as well. You know, oh, the shelf. This is why I can't.
This is why the shelf is
sucks.
bad.
This is why the shelf sucks. Yeah.
Because I can't finish playing with my toys. Yeah. Although I like the fact that he refers to that as the upper deck, but above the drive pods as the shelf in his breakdown of the fights and everything. That's the true shelf, the base shelf that you've got to get your robot up onto the drive pod.
Yep.
That's the next goal. If you get someone up there, that's an auto win, surely.
Yep.
I always wonder, what is going to happen. Like that camera, I think, is the most expensive camera in the entire arena, because that's the one that has the full gimbaling, and it's got no protection, right? So
come that day,
yep. Someone's going to have a very big bill.
Expensive day for BattleBots.
Definitely. It's a shame for Defender. You know, they had a decent season, 2 wins with I know they're an experienced team, but it's a new robot, and new robots always come with those kind of gremlins that you don't really expect. And the fact that they've won 2 fights against robots beginning with R, but lost one against one beginning with R, is cool. But Hydra's just very good, and the fact that Jake got it working, not much you can say really. Defender
is a really cool robot, but seemingly quite complicated. I mean, there's 6 different systems for running weapons of self-righting or whatever. Yeah, it's a lot going on. To wrap your mind around that is incredible on the first part, but it must be quite complicated for when you're trying to drive evasively. You're going and press that and press that and press that, trying to work everything at the same time to try and get it back down, back under. It's tricky, but yeah, difficult matchup.
Very difficult. Fight number 2 was Yeti and Cobalt.
Ouch.
My God.
Ouch. That's
Much.
right.
I mean, I was actually listening to Behind the Bots there a couple days ago, and they were interviewing Greg Gibson. He kind of highlighted the fact that he probably wouldn't come back to BattleBots in the future himself, because he was kind of irritated by the number of one-hit kill machines, I think is what he described it as. I think Cobalt fits the bill pretty nicely for that, because it didn't really, at that point, I was really enjoying the driving of Yeti, using the forks to kind of keep Cobalt away and kind of at a distance and not able to hit it, and then as soon as Maxim was able to get one decent connection.
Yeah, it's when he gets round that side, isn't it? And you see there's a moment where the entire side of Yeti is just peeled into the wheels and it's come away from the chassis, and you're like, oh, that's not going very well for them.
Not at all.
I think for us, if we sort of looking at it from the round of 16, we were like, gosh, if we get through Rotator, we have to fight the winner of Cobalt versus Whiplash. And I think either way, we were not necessarily looking forward to that. And especially after this fight, seeing just how vicious they were to Yeti, it was like, oh God, the road ahead is long.
Right.
So, this fight was fun to watch, I guess.
Right.
Theory, perhaps.
Yeah, definitely.
Right, and it's interesting to hear Greg talk about that, right? Because I also watched the Behind the Bots podcast, and they had a great interview about talking about the one-hitter robots and stuff. And it's interesting to think like, where did our because I don't think of that issue being present for Tantrum or Blip, right? We don't think about like, oh, we're scared of the one-hitters because like that's what we designed for. And so it's interesting to think about like, where did the design decision like deviate there with us and like Yeti? And so like Tantrum being a brick, like we want the one-hitter critters to like hit us because then they die, right? Like that was like the design intent right from the beginning, is to make a really well-armored robot. And I love Yeti. Like it is an awesome robot to watch. And the fact that, again, I'm a bit of a showman. I like to see the forks, the articulated forks, stay around, right? As everyone else like gets rid of them, like having extra degrees of freedom just makes it so much more interesting to watch. And so it's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting to see that whole discussion happening, because I don't want my robot to get destroyed one match and then I'm done with a $15,000 bill.
Yeah, that's the
like,
thing.
Yeah,
it's an expensive thing to happen, especially we've seen it happen twice to Yeti this season. Mad Catter earlier in the season did the same thing, and Cobalt's scary. Again, we spoke to Pete Abramson for the preview for the 32, and he mentioned his little interview or kind of segment with Cobalt's weapon, the kind of the little teeth where it lifts up an opponent just so, and then comes the big tooth.
The big tooth. Yeah,
terrifying.
It's a really clever design. I know the whole Cobalt team, both past, present, and future, did an AMA the other day. I implore you to go and have a read through, because there's some really interesting stuff over on Reddit. So yeah. But Dave Mould, Sam Smith were there, and as well as the Robotic Death Company. Mm-hmm.
I was going to say, did you guys go to China as well with Boxing Champion? Would you have seen Tungsten at the time?
This season, Alex, you're muted, but the season that we went, they were not there. Okay. But Alex and I did go with Aaron to China. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Sure. They got because they won the whole thing, right?
They won
This is Fighting Robots.
This is Fighting Robot. Yeah. But then they did not show up to KOB2.
No, I think that was over.
Where we went.
There was a payment dispute.
Money
there was a payment dispute.
Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, following season there, Sam.
Yeah.
The 1.5 to 2.
I've not watched any of the China. I watched the first season of Gigabyte, and that's it. And then
you need to.
I know.
Watch the fight edits.
I know. I need to. I need to set aside like a weekend or something and go through them all, because I know there's some good stuff out there, but I haven't got around to it at the moment.
Right.
Yeah, Cobalt's terrifying. I think that's enough said, really.
Yeah, I really hope we see Yeti again in the bounties that may or may not be happening. They're happening.
We know it. Jeff, we know this.
I'm winking furiously into the camera.
Okay, right.
Yeah, it's honestly one of the robots that you could put in the bounty like slot of just this is your target, and it would be a difficult matchup, because on a good day, Yeti is kicking ass, basically.
Definitely. Yeah, it's good to see it back, and hopefully we do see Yeti in some form in the future.
Yeah, I think before we do go on, what we've got this season of Yeti is more than we ever expected as well. As we spoke previously, Yeti was retired. Greg had finished with the sport, and then all of a sudden Yeti's back this year. And thank you very much to him and Christian Carlsberg for bringing it, because it's been really awesome to see it back in action.
Definitely.
Yep.
Can't agree more. Fight 3 was a bit of a shocker. I mean, or was it? I mean,
was it?
I mean, the higher seed won, but you always got to back Ray, haven't you? Like, you always know that somewhere deep down there's like a little element of doubt where you're like, oh, he's going to win this, isn't he? Like, you can never count him out.
This was... So the way I predicted this fight going was more akin to Bite Force versus Tombstone of 2019. However, the one key difference is that Jackpot isn't Bite Force.
It's not.
And it has 2 years of experience behind it instead of Bite Force's now. Well, it would have been 4 back then. Yeah. And Jackpot did take some sizable damage in this fight. They were showing the damage off behind the scenes afterwards, which had me concerned we were going to see a second glitch, because they were really leaning into the idea that, oh, they've taken a lot of damage, I wonder if they'll be able to get back in time.
Well, it's the fact that, the fact that Tombstone did not touch that top panel, the fact that all that energy caused that top panel to come off the way it did, like the amount of energy that must have gone through that robot's frame for the... I mean, I can't remember who it was, one of the Jackpot team. I think it might have been Jeff, because it's very much his kind of brand. He called it like the sign flippers at the side of the road. And that's what he called Jackpot in that fight, where,
there is a lovely shot where you can just see the sponsors on it, like in perfect clarity, it just in the middle of the air.
It's so good. But yeah, I mean, credit to the team. I mean, what a story, a robot built for, in roboteering terms, next to nothing. And it's just beaten Tombstone. Like, it's crazy. It is crazy to see, and
it's great to see as the home team as well. I mean, you got to love to see the home team doing well, and then they're the only home team this time. There's not a fleet of Californians ripping up the strip, and good. It's good fun. Jackpot being the only defender of Vegas, and all of the others coming to get the crown.
One thing I will ask though, from a Blip point of view, which would you have preferred?
I think we would have preferred Tombstone, just looking at it right now, and entirely because it's funny. We at filming, I think we were the second fight. We were in the very first in all of the filming, right? We were like the very first section, and I think we were right after Tombstone versus Captain Shrederator. And so that was the image that was ingrained in my head for the rest of the competition, right? Was Tombstone hitting Captain Shrederator and bursting into flames. And so obviously people can work things out during the competition, but like the Tantrum and Blip are designed to take on horizontals. And, getting some revenge after our season 3 fight,
definitely.
is also a lot of fun.
Definitely. The defisting was something special, wasn't it? And it would have been nice to kind of get that payback, and also show the evolution of yourselves, because I think, was that the team's first heavyweight, way back when?
That was the team's first combat robotic in general.
So there you go. Like, it kind of shows the evolution of yourselves, going from, a robot put in there as almost like a sacrifice to Tombstone, because Tombstone hadn't had enough fights that season or something. I don't know. Fighting them on a level playing field, like it's quite cool. It's quite cool.
I think it's sort of funny. We did an interview at one point where producers said, like, how does it feel to be seen as a joke bot and then be seen as a more serious bot now? And like the producer literally said that, and I was like, it's pretty cool.
The joke's on them now, I think, right?
Big joke bots going deep into the tournament undefeated.
Yeah.
Right. Oh man.
It must feel pretty good going back to that now, yeah.
That was funny.
yeah.
But as it is, you won't get the chance. It's Jackpot.
It is Jackpot.
What do you reckon? Is that kind of unnerving a little bit? Let's play a bit of hypothetical. What was kind of the thinking after that? Because Blip's done well so far. It has fought a vert at this point, but Lockjaw kind of didn't really get a chance to show what it could do.
This
Jackpot's
this
working
is the
well.
bot that beat Lockjaw last season, so
Yeah, right. It's a vertical spinner. You have to always be worried about him, right? Like, no matter what, especially once you pass a threshold of like energy level, which Jackpot clearly has, you always have to be scared of a vertical spinner, no matter how much you prepare. And so, yeah, going against Jackpot, you were a bit scared, and but we are prepared. Again, that's the thing. Like, that's always in the back of our minds. Like, okay, we have a contingency for this. We have a spreadsheet that says what our setup should be ideally against them, unless things change, right? And then we prepared this like before the event even started. And so it's just kind of thinking through again. All right, do we make the right call back then? And let's go ahead and execute. Yeah. And so
there you go.
I'm so thrilled that Blip is making such a deep run. It's so cool. But also kudos to Jackpot, who go one stage further than last year.
They did.
Steps in the right direction, always.
Definitely. Fight number 5. Let's hope I don't double click. I didn't. It's Black Dragon and Mad Catter. This is, I think, I kind of describe this as one of 3 fight of the season contenders in this episode. And this is the first one of those.
Yeah. This was an
unbelievable fight. It's just
absolute banger. It's the only fight from this week and from most of the weeks that I've still got the photo that was taken of just. It's like a scene from an action movie. There's a flame ball going off behind them or in front of them, I guess. And just, it's so cool. And this was such a coin toss of a decision. So cool.
I spoke to Calvin a little bit again this week about this fight, and the post they posted yesterday or the day before makes me a little bit sad. It makes me wonder, would this have influenced the judges if they kind of were a bit more careful? So apparently the reason why Mad Catter wasn't driving correctly or wasn't, fully in control, their lifter was too low to the floor and their front 2 wheels were off the floor, and they drove perfectly in the test box afterwards. And I do wonder if the judges thought they've got 2 damaged wheels and they can't drive correctly, when in reality that wasn't the case. And I suppose it's a lesson learned. It was a weird setup for Mad Catter as well. The kind of the asymmetrical. I mean, it was Sebastian the cat, wasn't it?
It was indeed Sebastian the cat, the wonderful stray with one eye,
who's still looking for a home.
It was working to an extent. That long wedge was holding Black Dragon back, and whenever you looked at when Mad Catter was in control of the fight, it was that long wedge that was underneath, doing really, really well. So, yeah, this was a really close one. Really, really close one. And I think just functionally, Mad Catter seemed to be not quite as good as Black Dragon at the end of it. So Black Dragon perhaps taking more damage points.
Yeah. Well, it was. I mean, we've seen since that the judges' cards have been released, I think, to BattleBot supporters. And I think one of the judges actually gave Black Dragon the more damage points than Mad Catter, which surprised me because there was a massive gash in the front of the wedge for Black Dragon, and both the forks were off, and one of the kind of, I'm going to kind of circle it with my mouse, I don't know if you can see it, the kind of weapon supports, they were also hanging off too.
I mean, the whole weapon was cracked. There was a whole section.
Yeah, it was so, like, if you see some of the pictures from the team's social media pages, like, they are so damaged. And, it's a testament again to the power that Mad Catter has this season, but wasn't to be this time, and they go out at the same stage they did last year in the round of 32. I don't know what you guys thought. Like, watching on, were you kind of like surprised at the judges' decision, or what do you think?
I could see it going either way. There's a lot of fights this year that I could see going either way, and this is again one of them. And it's always a blur because, like, as a builder, I don't have as much time to like go and delve into the post by Calvin. I didn't know that was out there, right? And so I'm like, I'm curious. I'm gonna go look at that one. But like, as a builder, you're worrying about your robot, whether it's at the competition or like right now, we're designing robots for next year. And so it's like you don't get as much info out there. And so it's interesting to see the post match stuff that you're chatting about. And it was a really close fight. I could see it going either way. I think they got their call right. I think they did. in this case. And so it's just a matter of also like perceived damage. So obviously they took the forks off, right? That is objective damage and a reduction in functionality. But like as you'll see later, like, you know, with gashes in the armor, is that reduced, like a reduced functionality? It's only a reduced functionality if, like, you know, it happens again, or right, like you still have the rest of the armor around it, and so it's interesting to obviously interpret the rules judges as you would.
Yeah.
So, but I do think you did mention earlier that there's like the functionality aspect too, like with their forks being on the ground. I do think that, and while they do request it sometimes about the functionality test after a match, right? I think that it should be standard. I think that you should be asked to go to your square at the end of a match, right? After everyone's done showboating and everything, but that the robot should go back to the square, and that they should go through a full functional and demonstrate it. And that's just the bar that everybody has at the end of a match. So
yeah, I don't remember which fight it was in, and they don't usually show this part of sort of like driving to the edge of the box and being carried out, but I remember in one of the fights we had, definitely I was like, okay, showboat the weapon a little, you know, as we drive over, you know, punch a little, like it works, like, you know, we've got some functionality. So I agree with Alex in that being able to demonstrate that.
Yeah. I think that's what might have cost Madcast. But credit to Black Dragon, you know, they didn't die. You know, a solid, I mean, as we all know, the most solid machine. And they've never been knocked out, ever.
No.
Which is crazy to me. Like, they've been here 3 seasons now and fought pretty much high-end opposition in every fight. So it's an astounding achievement. Well, we'll move on to our second one of the fight of the season contenders, and
this is definitely up there. This is every Flipper driver's perfect match scenario, because it just worked supremely well for the full 3 minutes, just showing that this is the difference between the pneumatic flippers and what Blip does, in that the power doesn't reduce as the fight goes on. If anything, it can get better and better and better.
I was thinking, because, you know, I've, you know, driven heavyweights over here. You know, my team, Duel Death Flamingo's a fairly regular runner on the UK live circuit, and for those that don't know, the UK live circuit is full of flippers, and I had a lot of sympathy for Valkyrie in this fight, because I'm used to being, you know, thrown around.
Like a fight with Michael Oates, right?
Yeah, literally, you know, fighting Eruption, or, you know, whoever it is. Talk us through it, because this was just unbelievable to watch. It's just, it was the best. Like, Valkyrie just died in an instant.
The spinner hit it and just went, oh no. And then it just continued to oh no around the arena.
Yeah, talk us through it.
So trying to remember it, because, you know, you had to remember we were sitting there queued up for our match, and so while we're watching their fight, I think we were right in the tunnel in this match, right? So we were in the tunnel queued up, so we didn't have the best view, but pre-match, you know, again, we had our configuration already set, and so we knew what we had to do going in. I'll let Aaron later. I think in another time he'll chat more about this one. But one of my favorite moments about this was obviously we know that Blip gyros, right? So when the flywheel spinner, which you can't see, is up to speed, Blip gyros and does wheelies. So when you're turning one direction versus the other, because we have a horizontal spinner, so instead of picking up a side left and right, it picks up front and back. And so in all of our preliminary matches, both from a let's see what the robot can do, but also a intentional maybe deception, we wanted to show that the robot wheelies a lot. And it appears that was a successful deception, in that we don't have to run the flywheel.
No.
Right? We don't have to have the flywheel up to speed. And, you know, that's why a lot of our fights are kind of disappointing at the beginning. And it was, you know, slowly revving up.
It's a slow burner.
In there. Yeah, it's a slow burner. And so once the weapon died, it's like, all right, ramp it up, you know, take that dial up to 11. But early on, it's just a control bot. And it is extremely well demonstrated here. So.
Yeah, and credit to Valkyrie too for, I think, sitting through all 18 or so of the Flip. in some ways giving us the opportunity to go after him more and chase after him. That was really fun.
I don't think the drive died the whole time. So
No.
It's pretty impressive.
Fred just walked off at the end. He was, I think he'd had enough at that point, wasn't he? He was
it's
just like, you know what? I put the controller down, that's it, I'm out.
I've heard of Flight of the Valkyries, but this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Playing drag, but never changes sides.
It was just like non-stop. Like it was almost disrespectful, but it was great. I loved it. You know, the most destructive robot of last year. Nah, I'm good. It's fine.
Up.
Right. Fantastic. What an amazing exhibition. Like it's kind of unfair to call it a fight. It was 3 minutes of bullying from Blip.
Oh, not with a face like that. You can't say that about Blip.
Oh, I could never. I love Blip. It's wonderful.
Bully.
But again, that's now a top 16 spot for Blip.
And still undefeated.
And what a crazy robot and season. It's just unbelievable.
Yep.
I know we chat frequently with Ryan from the Spinnerproof podcast, and he has said that might be his favourite robot fight of all time. It's up
just
there
as a demonstration of just like driving excellence, weapon excellence. It was just all there, and like you know, Valkyrie's not a slouch. You know, they got a top 16 last year. They were destroyed Rotator in that amazing fight, and you know the fact that Blip just kind of went.
There is a moment where Valkyrie lands on the upper deck and just sits there and goes, "They can't touch us here." Okay, let's go back in.
I don't know. I reckon Blip could have gyroed over and sent itself.
Yeah, just sent it up there and just like, "Hello."
There is no escape.
Oh no!
It's back.
Still after me. Oh,
I agree. I think it was a great demonstration of Blip and the technology and the differences, right? They did outline. I really appreciate when they kind of like talk about it a lot in the season, but they really outlined it here in that like we sort of have unlimited flips. I mean, it's there's like limitations, obviously, battery, and then also the life of the twisted cord actuator, right? But I personally was a little surprised we made it that many flips through the match with that twisted cord actuator that quickly, in that quick of succession, because the biggest thing that we're fighting is the heat generated by the twisted cord actuator, and so when you have it contracting and relaxing constantly over seconds of a cycle time, it was probably pretty warm after that fight.
It's covered in grease, isn't it?
It is covered in grease.
Horribly red grease. So when you open it up, it looks like an absolute murder scene.
At some point, Blip will get destroyed in the future, or at some point we're gonna see just. It's like that old story. It'll be too gruesome. They're gonna have to blur it out, right?
Yeah,
like they always talk about that Abraham Lincoln animatronic at Disneyland, where it used to have red hydraulic oil, and one day it malfunctioned, and he's.
See, this is why. Do you remember that thing when YouTube started banning robot combat videos because of it was animal violence? And this is literally it.
This is child violence. We're going to need John Bennett's redacted signs all over it.
Yeah, literally. Oh dear me.
Yeah.
Well, the next fight in the episode that we saw was yourselves, but they also cut in the two YouTube fights first. So we'll do them very quickly because they weren't that long. First one was Captain Shrederator and Rotator. This was awesome. Victor doing Victor Soto things with the wedge.
He split the shell.
I think
the shell is
one of the teeth go through it. I can't remember.
No, well, both of the teeth ended up outside it, so whether they went through it or not, I don't know. But one side of the shell where a tooth was is just cracked top to bottom perfectly and starting to overlay itself. And you can see it just as it turns slowly, as if it's just died, and you just see it, and you go, "Oh no!"
Yeah.
And then you see the other side, and it's just ripped the tooth out completely.
I think Shred did die. Like it was dead at the end. Like the lights were off, nobody was home. Yeah.
And it did damage to the upper deck.
It did.
It's the done spikes or the sort of spike strip type stuff on the corner of the two, where the two screws meet in the middle, and just tore that off slightly.
It was crazy damage.
So that's a bingo square.
Yep. That was impressive. That it's kind of funny because at King of Bots, we were talking a little bit about that. This is the second time we've seen a Shrederator shell, broken.
Yeah.
And because there's an untelevised King of Bots fight that
Ooh.
yeah, you know, a little bit of a behind the scenes
The,
thing.
the wiki readers have gone crazy now all of a sudden. You know? They're after you.
Well, I hope not to. I hope, you know, Brian wasn't trying to keep that secret. But yeah, he had a fight with the Huntsman, untelevised.
Right.
So
that's the Axebot from Australia, isn't it?
Right, with the inverted wedge.
Yeah.
So
now, that one really looks like a boat, Sam.
It does. You're
I'll
right.
have to show you.
Right.
Yeah. You've seen it.
I know what it is. Yeah, I know the one.
And that split the shell.
I again, you kind of see it here. Captain Shrederator split the shell, right?
Okay.
Like the energy level of Captain Shrederator is way up there, and so depending on how it's welded, how the heat affected zone is interacting with the rest of the shell, it creates a point of failure. And so that's what happened. I actually only saw the aftermath. I didn't get to see the fight, but yeah.
Well, of course, this fight as well also has consequences for yourselves because you end up fighting Rotator next. What did you think?
I think, like horizontals, Tantrum is not as worried about taking big hits to our armor because it's mounted so well that we sort of want to absorb that and be able to return it back to our opponents. But Rotator's a little nifty in that sort of we don't know which way they'll start, if they'll start down or up. And I personally was quite anxious that if they started up, if they happened to sort of get up a little or hit themselves, they could really knock Tantrum's weapon even when it was sort of back behind us and we wouldn't be able to punch. And so I tried to do a little spying and walk over and see sort of maybe where on my thigh or my shin their blade was. It wasn't very scientific and we ended up not welding anything to the armor, but I do believe we chose our tall armor configuration to go against them just to be safe. Yeah, but we'll see.
Interesting. The thing
They're
is,
scary. They're scary.
Yeah, of course.
They're a control bot. Like, I think they're a control bot with one of the best undercutters in the sport, right? Yeah. And so at that point, you have to fight Tantrum, which is also a control bot, right, at its core. Versus Rotator, and so it was a scary matchup that we knew was coming up, and I had no idea who was going to win. So you can have a feel of like a confidence level, and it was like 50-50, right?
This one is a real coin toss. I'm not looking forward to the predictions.
Yeah, we do our own prediction pool, and this is kind of the one of denied about. I think I have backed Rotator, which is a bit shameful for me to say.
How dare you?
I know.
Dare you?
It's like, for those that have listened for a long time will know this, but like we last year spoke to Aaron as well with Tantrum, and we said to his face,
you're going
to lose to Sawblaze. And then...
Okay, so what are you saying right now? Are you saying
what Sam is saying is that he will publicly apologise next week if Tantrum beats Rotator again.
I'll do it. I will do it. I will do it. It's
I'm not saying who I'm thinking is going to win because I haven't thought about it yet.
but now you can't say Rotator because you'll have to do it too.
I shall remain neutral. I'm Switzerland, and that is where I stand.
Oh dear.
I think this position is quite fun to be in for me. It's sort of perhaps underdog, perhaps underestimated. Tantrum, I think, has always been a little bit of a sneaky underdog, so we'll see.
It's interesting because this is a fight that you could have ended up having last year had the judge's decision against Endgame gone differently for Rotator.
And it was so close as well. It was a really close fight. It'd be interesting to see how you deal with it. I'm excited. Let's say that much.
It'll be a good one.
Next up, the other YouTube fight. I mean, this is like the worst draw possible for ICEWave. I mean,
bullying.
It's just. We've seen Whiplash deal with Bloodsport, and Bloodsport spins up an awful lot faster than ICEWave does, and yeah, the result is...
I'd like to take you back, before we even discuss this, to 2015-2016, I can't remember which. Splatter is a reserve bot, and one of the big names that they have to defeat to get in is ICEWave. Mm-hmm. Let's take it forwards to now. Here they are, beating ICEWave.
Yeah, on merit, and... the shoe's on the other foot now. ICEWave is the kind of the lower ranked machine, and Whiplash is the established.
It's really showing sort of the era of ICEWave and where it came from is sort of now starting to slide away.
Which is a shame.
Yeah, it's still a wonderful robot. I love it so much, but I think it may have now had its time.
I think there's one solution to this. Make it full brushless and, do the whole, underneath the skin, and then just stick a massive, petrol engine on there to make all the noise, and just don't have it connected to anything. Just rev it up throughout the whole
just
fight.
rev it up.
Right. It's the decoration weight, right? You get 10 pounds for decorative weight.
Yeah, there you go.
He's not spinning, but I can hear it revving.
It's disconcerting for me, that's for sure.
There's so much smoke. Is it on fire? No.
It's just... Thomas the Tank Engine had a little boiler in it and started puffing smoke out, so maybe ICEWave can too.
Right. Just wait for the moment where the ICEWave Rotator rematch happens. He decapitates ICEWave again, and he still keeps trucking.
He's still going. What's going on? He's still going.
I've now reached my final four.
This fight wasn't really much of a fight. As much as I was kind of surprised how long it lasted, though. The fact that
big first hit, and I was concerned that Piano Teeth was really starting to hinder them by getting stuck downwards. But they did manage to catch a seam and get them back up, ready to go again. And from there on, it was all Whiplash all the time.
Yeah, poor ICEWave, but
I did expect them to go up onto the upper deck instead of ending up upside down.
Yep.
Yeah, one of those fights where it's just a horrible draw for ICEWave, unfortunately, but.
This is indeed a story all about how you can finish the rest of those lyrics yourself.
Yeah. Fresh Prince fans rejoice. Now, let's talk about the other fight of the season contender. It's yourselves, Tantrum and Gigabyte. Where do we begin? Talk us through the kind of approach and expectation of the fight, because I think it didn't really go as anyone expected.
Yeah, a little behind the scenes, I guess, is I think one of the posts in the arena actually shot up unexpectedly as we were counted down. Is that the timing? Is that
no? Yeah, so
or it was as soon
there may have been a false start. There was a false start. We'll get to the false start. Ginger, do you want to run through the what we were feeling before the match started in general?
I can do that first. I think Gigabyte is very scary. I know we've been saying just hit us in the face. We don't mind. We want to absorb your energy.
This ain't a normal spinner.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So the stakes are different. But again, that's sort of our playbook. So that's what we go with. We had the wedge out, ready to take some of that energy. And as you sort of saw in some of the post-fight pictures, just tore holes through the arm. It was shocking. I'd never seen anything like that. They literally were spun up like a tool and cut into us. It was shocking. They were literally, I don't know. It was really exciting to see those pictures afterwards. But I think Alex the playbook is the same. You sort of start slow, keep your weapon protected up in the back of the robot, drive into them, control bot, push them around. I think full body spinners need time to spin up. And so if we can sort of get them spun down, absorb that energy, and have them sort of in our grips, then it's an easy fight from there. But sort of the beginning, the first half is very, very important. And Alex, maybe you can talk about why that was a little
sketch.
Yeah.
Okay, so this was a really interesting fight in that there was a false start. So as the beep, the timer's coming down, Gigabyte started spinning up too soon. So they started spinning up before the green light came on. And we're not paying attention to Gigabyte. We're just staring at that light. We didn't see that they were false starting at all. We just know that we have to take Tantrum, get from one end of the arena to the other as quickly as possible. And so, unbeknownst to us, they were spinning up early. Also unbeknownst to us, the solution for false starting is to take all of the whack-a-moles. I'm sure you've seen those in the arena.
Yeah.
And they raise all of them. And so Tantrum, by the time it got from its square to that first whack-a-mole, which is I think 10, 12 feet away, was at full speed. And whack-a-mole comes up and the wedge lit.
It was kind of bent, wasn't it? And when I first saw the pictures, with the fight photos, you can see it's kind of bent to the floor. I was like, has Gigabyte done that? Yeah. And it wasn't Gigabyte. It was one of the whack-a-moles. It
was the whack-a-mole. And if TV magic, it was perfect, pristine, right? And then all of a sudden, they edited it well in that they did hide this part, but they don't really show the wedge much until after the first impact. But yes, it was pristine, and before our match started, as we're driving across, it was bent up, and so so that was, you know, a bit of a contentious part with us. We're trying to decide, you know, is this the hill we die on? Do we tell them we're not gonna like fight until we can fix this?
Yeah, flatten our wedge sort of thing.
Yeah, and so we ended up deciding, you know, I think we'll be okay. You know, it's still a wedge. We'll go in and, you know, just shove them around the arena. Hindsight 2020, I kind of wish we would have stuck to that initial gun and went and repaired it. Because, you know, it's like 2 pins, pull it out and pop a new one in. And so we could have done it just real quick and off to the side. But we decided to proceed anyway. As a result of that wedge being bent, I think Dylan Carey, our driver, is getting a lot more hate than he deserves, because with it bent, and we didn't know this until after the match officially started, is that it was pulling the front 2 wheels off the ground quite a bit, and so we were basically driving that whole match with the back 2 wheels.
So here we are, Mad Catter again.
Yeah,
right, exactly. And then we lost one of those 2 wheels.
Yeah.
So at that point,
that explains why the driving is sort of half going, and then all of a sudden you're driving absolutely fine again. It's like, oh, okay.
Yep. And so we lost against his wedge. You know, I'm not gonna say one way or another if he would have been better, like with the pristine wedge, right? If we would have beat them, but he was beating us with the wedge. And so in that first couple interactions, you know, we were being held against the wall. But you know, it ended up being a nail biter. It was really exciting, so I do enjoy that part of it, and I'm glad that we came out with the win. I could see it going either way, right? Like a lot of these matches.
It's another coin toss one, really.
Definitely. For me,
interesting.
I was going to quickly, like, first of all, I want to talk about Gigabyte's wedge, because
that's what I was about to bring up anyway.
Okay, so. Well, the thing was with this, I don't know how last minute it was, but you could see one of the teeth fall off before the fight.
This is interesting. This is an attachment they tried at King of Bots.
We love King of Bots this episode. Look at this.
We do. So this was an interesting setup that I hadn't ever predicted them using ever again, because I think in King of Bots managed to tear it off themselves, and send it flying across.
I quite like it. I think they should go with it. Like, I think they should try and make it a permanent thing, because like
I actually like it too. I do like it too.
Like, make it a little bit more sturdy, obviously, because it got ripped off. But
yeah, it does seem very, as you said, flimsy. I mean, immediately as they do the robots activate, they drive forwards, and one of the wedges goes.
It just falls off.
They got to fix that part. But the you know, I think it is a good engineering decision to actually have the entire thing leave the robot.
Yeah.
Right. So you know, it comes off as flimsy, and it is damage points in our favor in that match, right? Because it is objective damage, but sometimes ablative things, sometimes things that you when they break. Like, you look at the failure mode, right? As an engineer, you look at the design failure mode analysis. And in this case, if that wedge gets bent up, then it also takes out their weapon.
It does. Yeah. So the fact that it broke off is quite a good thing for them.
Correct.
The next thing I wanted to talk about, there was one moment. Well, first of all, the fact that Gigabyte fits perfectly in the kind of little lip thing that Tantrum has at the front was very, very... It sparked a lot of joy, let's say that much. And you kind of have them against the upper deck, and you spin the weapon up, and I'm thinking, they're just going to absolutely detonate Gigabyte here. And you don't do it. And what happens? It teased me so much. I was expecting a massive bang, and there goes Gigabyte, it's gone flying, and the shells come off again or something. and nothing. What happened?
We still don't know exactly what happened, because it works later.
Yeah, exactly. Right?
Like, it worked so before, and it works later, and so we weren't sure. So the leading suspicion, because you can actually, if you watch it, you know, slowly, you can see the chains tensing.
It does twitch. Right? It has a little think about twitch. It. But
I think we throughout the season had issues with our rails, because we had the same aluminum sort of like plates on either side of our weapon carriage, but we had made sort of new rails to retrofit in them, and those aluminum pieces were already quite potato chipped and funny. So I think we struggled with that all season, getting the sort of the slot height right on those rails for the weapon to sort of be able to travel, because if it's too tight, it'll get jammed. But obviously if it's too loose, you don't want that either. And so we were working with like Autodesk like throughout the season to be like, okay, take a little bit more off, maybe take a tiny bit more off. And so my prediction is that they were jammed. We definitely had to do a little, I think, magic and witchcraft to get that to run smoothly at certain points. So I think it just got stuck, and then it must have hit something or gotten out of that position. Maybe there was like just a tiny chip in there. Honestly, the smallest thing. We were going in there with, rubbing alcohol, with grease, with everything clean, just the tiniest little difference. Right.
And that, exactly. What Ginger said is absolutely likely the reason is that it was just cockeyed and something just wasn't playing right, so.
The last thing was, I'm going to cast our minds back, Jevon. We spoke to Jake Hewitt all the way in episode 1, and he mentioned about a robot getting stuck on the upper deck, spinning up to full, and then coming down and hitting something, and it was amazing. I think it was in this fight, because it was God, pretty spectacular. What an impact.
I didn't expect it to go at all well for Gigabyte, because obviously we've seen it when it
coming
pivots,
off at an angle. Yeah,
it's going to hit the floor, it's going to send itself, but it managed to hit the floor, bounce into Tantrum, and then fly off, and both robots went. And
Gigabyte was fine afterwards. It was great. And then the wall eventually had died, which I kind of expected eventually, but wowee. I mean, just the fact that they took the wheel out, sliced through the armour, the lot.
We spoke last year, Bounty Hunters and all sorts, about where Gigabyte started in BattleBots to where it is now. Worlds apart. Before we weren't seeing this level of power from Gigabyte.
And reliability.
And now it's sending robots across the arena. There's the wonderful shot in the middle where they go flying towards the driving booths, Tantrum goes flying towards the upper deck. It just the biggest transfer of energy. It's just fantastic.
That is one of my favorite shots of BattleBots of all time. Obviously, I'm biased. We participated. Right. Later on, you had the Beyblade Tantrum, right, spinning across the arena,
just feeling the full G-force.
Yeah, and that was one of my favorite moments. And we come back after the fight, it's like everyone else on the team that's not on Tantrum, all the Blip crew members are just like, man, you really had to make us sweat for that one. Seeing the armor sliced through, seeing us both flying through the air is awesome. It's like it's one of the downsides of having a lower energy control bot, right? Is that you don't always get those spectacular hits, but when you do, it takes them, what you see here, right? Definitely. Tantrum just keeps on trucking, albeit, limping along in this fight.
Well, I was going to ask, did you guys think that you'd done enough to win?
Go ahead.
I think at the end of the match, I might have been manifesting a little, because when I watched the episode, I was like, wow, I really sounded quite confident. But, when I rewatched the match, it definitely was closer than it looked. And then how I felt, I think I just sort of wanted it so bad. I was like, yes.
I think the fact that it's unanimous, that was the thing that surprised me. I thought, okay, when I watched it the first time, I thought it's going to be a split decision. It's so close. And
I think
it wasn't.
Well, you say that. It was close. But it was close all in favour of Tantrum. Things like 5-6. I think there's only 1-7-4.
Yeah,
is that right? Is that enough points?
Yeah.
Again, the fight cards are on Twitter and Facebook if you want to go and see them.
But I think it's what a common misconception is that a fight can still be close if it's unanimous.
Yes.
And that the judge's decision can be close. This was a close judge's decision, but all three judges agreed, which is wonderful, in favour of Tantrum, which means that the judging rules and the judging guide and everything are making moves in the right direction, that it's less confusing and we're not getting such varied opinions of the judges, that they're all able to make a concise decision.
Right.
Yeah. And there's nothing that says, you have to have obviously it would be nice to have a dominant showing, but as long as we win every match, that's what matters.
Well, it's as we said earlier, it's another win for yourselves, and that's now 7-0 seems reasonable.
The only other team to have two bots
Top
in
16.
the tournament, in the top 16 of the tournament, is Team Waiachi.
And that was
who are
Hydra.
a big name. Yeah, Hydra Son of Waiachi back in 2019. It's huge to have two bots up here.
And even then, like Hydra obviously didn't lose any fights that season, but Son of Waiachi did. And like, is it kind of flashing for yourselves to kind of be compared to that? Because obviously they've been around forever.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like the Waiachi team, like you hear this a million times, right? And everyone gets sick of it. But, you know, I did watch them as a kid, right? I had the Son of Waiachi toy, right? As a, you know, in my cousin's house, we were, you know, fighting robots, and we'd fight over who gets to play with the Son of Waiachi. And like in season 3, there was a moment where I was helping I think it was Reese carry out parts to Son of Waiachi over to the welding tent because he had his arms full. So I helped him, and I had that realization in season 3. It's like, whoa, like I'm here holding a robot that like I loved as a kid, and you know, can somewhat attribute becoming an engineer too, right? Like this whole
there's a path
environment, right? This whole path, like you know, and to see that, and to now be compared to them, right? And to get to fight them, right? We got to fight Fusion last year,
yeah,
and you know,
the hat,
and the hat. To not only be compared to them, like what people don't necessarily realize as much is that like they make awesome robots, right? They Hydra is a flipper, but it does have this absolutely like awesome level of engineering put into it. And so from that perspective, like, you know, Jake and Terry and the rest of the family are making these cool robots to, you know, for our entertainment. And now we are also like right up there, and it feels good. And the hope is that, you know, some viewer out there sees us, right? Seems Reasonable, Robotics, sees, you know, Ginger and myself up there, and thinks this is really cool. I want to do this in the future. Definitely. And if we get one person, you know, down the road, we get, you know, a letter from a fan that, you know, we had that impact on them, then it was all worth it.
Absolutely.
Definitely. Okay. Well, we mentioned Hydra. It's time to talk about the last fight of the night, and this is Jake Ewart Big Brain time. Jake Ewart is a bad man because I chose Ribbot to win this season, and I'm really sad. God damn it.
This is an interesting
it really
fight
is.
For multiple reasons. Let's talk first of all about the setup for Hydra, because Hydra was a bit cheeky in the pre-stages, and they have to take a picture and send it to production of how their robot will look going in. And so what they did, they put on their piano fork wedgelets, but they welded them all together so that they would be like just a big thing to hit, and it was actually thicker than their big thick front end that we saw last year. And so Ribbot's horizontal setup just bounced off it.
So for my thinking as well, I think Ribbot would have liked to have gone horizontal anyway, because they hadn't tested their self-righter at this point, and I feel like once the frog lid came off, it could run upside down. So
yep.
In
this
my
was perfect
mind,
setup for Ribbot.
Exactly. I don't think going with the vert would have made much sense, because if the self-righter broke, then they lose.
Thinking about how hard Ribbot hits as well.
Yeah.
It was causing some big damage there. I mean, it has wrecked a lot of things inside Hydra to the point where they've had to pull it all apart to get it back in again. So all of the hydraulic pump and the front cylinder section has all been ripped out and split into multiple pieces.
Well, if you go look at eBay, you can see all the parts.
Just scroll through the damage. The front of the flipper panel came off again. The whole flipper arm itself is warped and bent. It's just, it's a mess. And Ribbot was doing so well, and sticking the landing on all of its hits.
Like some of the impacts were like, it was. I've never seen a heavyweight behave the way it did, because like it was kind of like
it was like watching
through the
Beatles.
Air. It was crazy.
It was like watching Norwalk Havoc in heavyweight scale.
Unbelievable. And Ribbot. Well, now comes the should Ribbot have been counted out talk. In my mind, yes, it should have done, because it's consistent with the Mammoth count out from earlier in the season and the Malice count out from earlier in the season.
As I have said to Sam, the fact that this is even a rule is utter tosh. If the robots still work, keep fighting is my mindset. Just because it's not going to be a good fight, then it's just absolute rubbish. But the fact that it is a rule and that they have been somewhat consistent with it. I mean, again, I had big problems with the Mammoth Tombstone count out to the point where I've just become completely desensitized to this one because this is it's the same thing. Here we are again, except Hydra was still moving fine and Ribbot weren't. So apparently also it took 60 seconds to get that count out started.
I disagree. Per the rules, right? It's controlled movement in a direction, right? And it's
they
one
were
of those
controlled
things,
in a direction.
They were controlled in a direction, and so like if your robot, whether it's wobbling back and forth to get over there, right? Like there's nothing in the rules. Your robot could do that intentionally from the get-go, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing in the rules that says you have to look good doing it.
No,
right, you can have this. Look at Rex. Right, did Rex get counted out at the very beginning of every match? Right. And so, in my opinion, if you are showing like the test, right, like it's not an official test, right, but like if you were to say go to your square, if you can go to your square from somewhere in the arena,
doesn't matter how long it takes, sort of thing.
It does. Yeah, I think that you are still showing controlled movement, and I hope that they do get rid of any crab walking rules in the future.
I like the idea of spotlight coming down over the robot, and this is something that many people have suggested. A spotlight comes down over your robot. If you leave that spotlight, you're fine. You're still in the fight. If you don't fully leave that spotlight, you can be counted out, or you are counted out.
Well, my 2 cents is that you should get a tap out button, and the match goes until the tap out is done, or you are like if at 0 movement, I think you should get KO'd. Yeah. Right. 0 movement. Nothing happens. If you don't show any movement whatsoever, like even if a Shrimek is moving, I don't think you should get counted out, right? I think that once you're at the point where 0 movement happens, you get counted out. Otherwise, you have that little button. You can always press that little button and end it. But that's my take. I don't know if other people agree, but I think that you should have a tap out button because also the thing that you have to remember is that like if you're in that state, right? If Ribbot is in that state of just wobbling back and forth, you're like if Hydra is positioning themselves, if they are being aggressive, they're going to win the judges.
Yeah,
they have the advantage. Yeah, so they win the judges match no matter what. So
I think Jake said it during the fight. He was pretty wrecked, didn't he? He said afterwards. I don't really understand. I mean, I hope that the crowd booing was purely him being the villain of BattleBots and not the result of the fight. Because what was he meant to do? Like,
there was nothing he could do.
Yeah,
about that
you're not going to engage. Like, Ribbot's very
refs,
dangerous.
The refs chose to count out Ribbot at that point. They saw it as crab walking and mobile. Yeah. However they're defining it these days, and that was that. The rule is trash. Get rid of it.
And I'm just going to go and cry because I think that makes us all 3 of our predictions for the start of the season, Jevon. And
I went last week with Hypershock, and you and Steve this week. Ribbot, Gigabyte. So long, farewell, Auf Wiedersehen.
Team seems reasonable next year, I guess.
Well, I mean,
this is the thing. So now that Hypershock is out, this little boy here is everything to me.
Oh,
there you go.
Apologies to Tantrum, but
I won't take it personally.
Well, I was going to say, as much as I think Rotator will win, I would love Tantrum to go and win the whole thing. Now, this is. I mean, I'm
now you're just hedging. Now you're just hedging your bet.
I'm wearing the t-shirt. I'm wearing the t-shirt. There you go. You see.
Oh, okay.
The thing is, if both Blip and Tantrum make it through to the round of 8, it will be the first team ever to have 2 robots go through.
That would be amazing to see.
That'd be pretty damn incredible.
I mean, there is obviously a path where you may end up fighting each other in the semis.
From the get-go, at the round of 32, they already started asking us. You might hit each other, like you might have to fight.
Say, like, what was your kind of thinking? Like, let's play again the hypothetical.
Yeah.
Who wins?
How easy would you go on each other? Because obviously the prize is a result in the final, right? Like, do you kind of have a unwritten rule of if it stops working, just do not touch it anymore. Like, try and save as much power as you can. Like, what's the
so
protocol?
Here's where we kind of landed. Like, because there's obviously you're fighting each other. Like, how do you go forward? If we are gonna get matched against each other, we are an open book in that we will discuss how each robot, because like we already know all of our configurations, obviously. So we're gonna say, okay, this configuration that beats that, this other configuration beats that. Like go through that whole process, but that ultimately the like team leads would just decide secretly. Like we'd just be like kind of like a rock paper scissors game, right? Decide this is what we're gonna run, and just treat it like a real match, because like the fans deserve that, right? We're not gonna take it easy just because we're trying to preserve parts, right, and be strategic about it necessarily, because we have parts, right? We and so again, the fans deserve the match that they want to see.
A proper fight.
A proper fight, right?
Whether you fight or whether you fought or not between the two bots, who do you reckon, like before the season, who would you have said would win?
Tantrum.
Tantrum.
Of course.
And who would Aaron say would win?
We don't talk about that.
Yeah, I think this is another sort of tongue-in-cheek answer. I think production asked us a few times, like, oh, you know, are you going to fight Blip? Like, what do you guys think? And the answer I think we always gave is yes, but like in the finals. What we will. But obviously the way the bracket worked out, that's not
semi-finals.
That'll do. It's close enough.
Yeah.
That was our answer.
Before we round off, the last thing I wanted to do is suggest a merch idea.
Oh,
okay. So,
Hello, dragons. Today I'm going to be.
I'm wearing a Tantrum t-shirt. Obviously, I have a Blip one somewhere in the wash. Jevon, do you have one in the wash?
Yeah.
I have the poker chips. A friend of the channel, Charlie Hubbard, had a great idea. You know those kind of invertible like octopuses that have the angry face and the happy face on either side? Can we have an orange angry face Tantrum and a blue happy face Blip?
Oh.
Reversible octopus.
I know exactly what you're talking about because my roommate has one that she leaves on her door handle to let me know how she's feeling.
Make it happen. So come on, this is the ultimate goal of what, you know, Robot Combat merch is a reversible octopus.
Yeah, the rusty plush is happening, so now we just need the Tantrum Blip.
Okay. All right.
No promises, but we will bring it back to our team.
Excellent. I know Charlie will be happy because he said it to me. I'm like, oh my god, that's genius! Like, why has that not happened yet?
I wonder, maybe we can do like a limited edition release on eBay or something of like 10 or 20.
I would buy one in an instant for sure.
Yeah. All right, we'll look into it. We'll look into the details.
Excellent.
Thank you for your recommendation.
No, that's my place. Like Charlie, he's going to.
Yeah, thank you, Charlie.
Thank you.
Well, with that said, that's everything wrapped up. And Alex and Ginger, thank you so much for your time. This has been a real joy. And hopefully, I hope I'm wrong next week, and I hope that Tantrum does beat Rotator.
We do too.
But with that said, I have been Sam Elliott 64.
I have been World of Woodrow.
I've been Alex Grant.
I've been Ginger.
And myself and Jevon will see you next week, and hopefully Steve, for the round of 16.
Woo!
We'll see you then.
Oh god, it's coming.
I'm Ginger.
And I'm Alex from Team Tantrum. Oh, sorry. You're gonna take two.
That's going in.
Yeah, oh god.
I like the addition that you added, but I just wasn't ready.
That's okay. I should have warned you.
Right.